All right, so determine the cost per equivalent unit. We can certainly do that. And if we look here at our formula, it says cost per equivalent unit is simply equal to the costs added during the period. Very, very important. We are not going to consider uh, under FIFO, we're not going to consider costs that were incurred during the prior period. Okay, and that's going to be our numerator. Our denominator is equivalent units of production. So on the surface seems pretty basic here. So cost per equivalent unit for the FIFO method, that's just a dash, it's not a minus sign. And then we have our formula here, pretty basic. Uh, Again, only cost added during the period over the number of equivalent units of production in that period. Okay, so that's simple enough. So if we look at this, what we've been given here is we've been given some figures. And these figures, we were looking at the month of July. So they've given us kind of a written formula here for direct materials cost per equivalent unit. And then what they've done is they've kind of handed us a figure here of $66,000. And this is important because this figure will change from month to month. Materials costs and conversion costs, for that matter, are really never going to be exactly the same from one period to the next. And we're going to look at an example of that here in just a moment. So what we already know that regardless, at least in the examples that we're looking at, we were able to start and complete 57,000 gallons of ice cream in the month of July, but then we also had another 3,000 that were 100% complete as to materials, and so that's where we're getting this 60,000 gallons here. They are giving us the cost of those materials, and so they're saying, okay, well, the materials that were requisitioned cost $66,000. Yeah, $66,000 divided by 60,000 gallons of materials that were requested, and that's where they got their $1.10 per gallon. Okay, and then down here for conversion cost per unit, remember we had three different figures that went into this. There were 1,500 gallons equivalent conversion units from items that were started uh, in the prior period. Then we had the 57,000 that were started and completed in the current period. And then we had 750 additional units. We came up with 59,250 equivalent units for conversion costs for the period. And then they have given us this figure of 17, let's see here, 17,775. And then we're going to divide that by the 59,250 equivalent units for conversion, and we come up, in fact, with the 0.3 or 30 cents per gallon. Okay, so this is going to you're almost always going to have to, at some point, add these two numbers in your homework or on a test to get an answer that you've been asked for in whatever class it is you're in. Okay, so here are these figures. So it says here that these costs must be allocated to the units transferred out and the partially completed units on hand at the end of the period. Okay, and that's good information. I want to show you something here. It says that the total production cost to be assigned for Frozen Delight, that's the company we're dealing with, in July, are $90,000, computed as follows. And we have here our beginning work in process inventory amounted to $5,000 for the 5,000 gallons. Now remember, in the month of July, our materials were costing us $1.10 per gallon. But we probably don't even need a calculator to figure out that $5,000 divided by 5,000 gallons is only $1 direct materials cost back in the month of June. So this is a change here. We also know that our conversion costs are 30 cents per gallon in the month of July, but watch this. We had 5,000 gallons that were 70% completed. That's 3,500 gallons at a cost of $12.25 in conversion cost. That was beginning work in process. So we take that $12.25 and divide it by 3,500. We see that conversion costs for the prior period were 35 cents per gallon. 30 cents for the current period. So this is something that if you're trying to figure this out and back into it and say, okay, how did they come up with these numbers? Well, they're just giving us these numbers here. They're just giving them. This is for a prior period, and the costs have changed for the month of July. So very important. Direct materials cost for the $60,000 for materials requested in July is $66,000. Additionally, we had direct labor. Direct labor is just always going to be whatever it is for the period, so that's $10,500. And then we haven't had to do, we didn't have to come up with a predetermined overhead rate or anything like that. They're just giving us the amount of overhead applied as $72.75. That works out to $83,775. You add these two figures, we get $90,000. However, these are total production costs for the month of July. We are not, however, saying that total production costs are $90,000. Why? Well, because we incurred some cost before. And so, like I said, remember we're going to have some costs that were completed in the month of July, and they're going to be added. Okay, whoops, I keep doing this, keep scrolling too soon. So it says the units to be assigned these costs follows. Okay, and we know that we had 5,000 units in beginning inventory plus that are assumed to be completed plus 50,000 both started and completed. That gives us 62,000. Adding in the 3,000 units in work in process, we have our 65,000 gallons, and we have a total cost of 90,000. So we're going to take this group by group. The 5,000 gallons of inventory in work in process at the beginning of the month. These were assumed to be completed and transferred out to the packaging department. We add absolutely nothing for materials. Why? Because materials are assumed to be added at the beginning of the process. However, of those 5,000 units, they were only 70% complete. So what we're going to do for the month of July is we're going to take that 5,000 minus the equivalent units that were completed in the prior period. Whoops, I messed that up. 5,000 minus 3,500 is our 1,500. And if you recall, they gave us the cost for conversion as like 17,775 or something like that, and we had to divide it by the 59,250. Anyway, we came up with the 30 cents. So if we multiply this by the conversion cost per equivalent unit of 30 cents, we do in fact come up with 450. So we're going to add to this 62.25 $450. So the total cost of those 5,000 in-process inventory that's going to be transferred to the packaging department is going to be the 62.25 that we already incurred, plus the 450, giving us 66.25 in total. Okay, but that's just for group one. Group two is probably the easiest to calculate because all we have to do is say, okay, we had 57,000 units that were started and completed in the month of July. So we just merely multiply 57,000 times the $1.10 per equivalent unit cost for materials. That'll give us the 62.7. Then we have our conversion costs. These 57,000 gallons are 100% complete as to conversion cost. So all we have to do is multiply it by our July figure that we got a few slides back of 30 cents. We come up with 17.1. We merely add these two numbers together, and that gives us 79.8. So cost of July 1 in process inventory was the 62.25 plus the 450 conversion cost that we incurred in the month of July for 66.75, plus the cost of the unit started and completed, the 79.8 we just looked at. So total cost transferred to packaging department in July, 86,475, not 90,000. Okay. We still have to account for the full 90,000, however. Okay. So 86,475. Costs transferred to packaging department in July. That means that the difference between 90,000 and 86,475 is going to be the value in the ending work in process account for the mixing department. Let's see what we have here. 35.25, and here it is. Again, we're putting the direct materials in at the beginning of the process, so all we have to do is take all 3,000 gallons, multiply it by our $1.10, and if we do that, we will get 3,300. However, recall that our conversion costs were only 25% complete. Okay, so 3,000 times 25% complete as to conversion cost gives us 750 equivalent units in ending inventory as to conversion cost. And of course, if we multiply that by our 30 cents per equivalent unit, we come up with 225. We add the 3,300 and the 225, and there it is, our 35.25. And here's our total final allocation of cost. Group 1 is 66.25. That was what was that? That was 62.25 in beginning work in process plus the $450 of conversion costs added during the period. We looked at the 57,000 started and completed. That's 100% complete as to materials and conversion costs, totaling 79.8. Okay, so our 62,000 gallons cost us a total of 86,475. And finally, our Group 3 inventory in process as of July the 31st, 3,000 units that are 100% complete as to materials, but only 25% complete as to conversion costs, total 35.25. Okay, I think we have one more video for this chapter, and then we'll be all done.